Jim said. Our daddy's a friend of your daddy's. Scout here. She's crazy. She won't fight you anymore. I wouldn't be too certain of that. I said Jim's free dispensation of my pledge irked me, but precious noontime minutes were ticking away. Yeah, Walter, I won't jump on you again. Don't you like butter beans? Our gal's a real good cook. Walter stood where he was, biting his lip. Jim and I gave up, and we were nearly to the Radley place when Walter called, Hey, I'm coming. When Walter caught up with us, Jim made pleasant conversation with him. I ain't lives there, he said cordially, pointing to the Radley place. Ever hear about him, Walter? Reckon I have, said Walter, almost died first year I come to school and ate them bacons. Folks say he pissed them and put him over on the school side of the fence. Jim seemed to have little fear of poor Radley now that Walter and I walked outside beside him. Indeed, Jim grew boastful. I went all the way up to the house once, he said to Walter. Anybody who went up to the house once ought not to still run every time he passes it. I said to the clouds above. And who's running, Miss Press? You are, when ain't anybody with you. By the time we reached our front steps, Walter had forgotten he was a Cunningham. Jim ran to the kitchen and asked Calpurnia to set an extra plate. We had company. Atticus greeted Walter and began a discussion about crops neither Jim nor I could follow. Reason I can't pass the first grade, Mr. Finch, is I have to stay out ever. Spring and help Papa with the chopping. But there's another at the house now that's field size. Did you pay a bushel of potatoes for him? I asked, but Atticus shook his head at me. While Walter piled food on his plate, he and Atticus walked together like two men to the wonderment of Jim and me. Atticus was expounding upon farm problems when Walter interrupted to ask if there was any molasses in the house. Atticus summoned Calpurnia, who returned hearing the syrup pitch. She stood waiting for Walter to help himself. Walter poured syrup on his vegetables and meat with a generous hand. He would probably have poured it into his milk glass had I not asked what the same meal he was doing. The silver saucer clattered when he replaced the pitcher, and he quickly put his hands on his lap. Then he tucked his head. Atticus shook his head at me again, but he's gone and drowned his dinner in syrup, I protested. He's poured it all over. It was then that Calpurnia requested my presence in the kitchen. She was furious, and when she was furious, Calpurnia's grammar became erratic. When in tranquility, her grammar was as good as anybody's in Maycomb. Atticus said Calpurnia had more education than most African American folks. When she squinted out at me, the tiny lines around her eyes deepened. There are some folks who don't eat like us, she whispered fiercely, but he ain't called on contradict them at the table when they don't. That boy's your company, and if he wants to eat up the tablecloth, you let him, you hear? He ain't company, Cal. He's just a Cunningham. Hush your mouth. Don't matter who they are. Anybody sets foot in these houses, your company, and don't you let me catch you remarking on their ways like you were so high and mighty. Your folks might be better than the Cunninghams, but it don't count for nothing the way you are disgracing them. If you can't act fit to eat at the table, you can just sit here and eat in the kitchen. Calpurnia sent me through the swinging door into the dining room. With a stinging smack, I retrieved my plate and finished dinner in the kitchen, thankful, though, that I was spared the humiliation of facing them again. drown myself in Parker's eddy, and then she would be so sorry. Besides, I added she'd already gotten me in trouble once today. She had taught me to write, and it was all her fault. Hush your fussing, she. Jem and Walter returned to school ahead of me, staying behind to advise Atticus of Calpurnia's iniquities was worth a solitary sprint past the Redley place. She likes Jem better than she likes me anyway, I concluded, and suggested that Atticus lose no time in backing her off. Have you ever considered Jem doesn't worry about her half as much? Atticus's voice was flinty. I have no intention of getting rid of her now or ever. We couldn't operate a single day without Cal. Have you ever thought of that? You think about how much Cal does for you, and you mind her. You're here. I returned to school and headed Calpurnia steadily until a sudden shriek shattered my resentments. I looked up to see Miss Caroline standing in the middle of the room, sheer horror flooding her face. Apparently she had received enough to persevere in her profession. It's alive, she screamed. The male population of the class rushed as one to her assistance. Lord, I thought, she's scared of a mouse, little Chuck, little whose patience with all living things was phenomenal. Said, which way did he go, Miss Caroline? Tell us where he went quick, DC. He turned to a boy behind him. DC, shut the door and we'll catch him. Quick, ma'am, where'd it go? Miss Caroline pointed a shaking finger not at the floor, not at a desk, but to a hulking individual unknown to me. Little Chuck's face contracted and he said gently, You mean him, ma'am? Yes, he's alive. Did he scare you some way? Miss Caroline said desperately, I was just walking by when it crawled out of his hair. Just crawled out of his hair. Little Chuck grinned broadly. There ain't no need to fear a goody, ma'am. Ain't you ever seen one? Not until you be afraid. You just go back to your desk and teach us some more. Little Chuck Little was another member of the population who didn't know where his next meal was coming from, but he was a born gentleman. He put his hand under her elbow and led Miss Caroline to the front of the room. Now, don't you fret, ma'am, he said. There ain't no need to fear a goody. I'll just fetch you some cool water. The goody's host showed not the faintest interest in the furor he had wrought. He searched the scalp above his forehead, located his guest, and pinched it between his thumb and forefinger. Miss Caroline watched the process in horrid fascination. Little Chuck brought water in a paper cup and she drank it gratefully. Finally she found a voice. What is your name, son? She asked softly. The boy blinked. Oh, me? Miss Caroline nodded. Burris Ewell. Miss Caroline inspected her roll book. I have Ewell here, but I don't have a first name. Would you spell your first name for me? Don't know how. They call me Burris. Well, Burris, said Miss Caroline, I think we would better excuse you for the rest of the afternoon. I want you to go home and wash your hair. From her desk she produced a thick volume, leafed through its pages, and read for a moment a good home remedy for Burris. I want you to go home and wash your hair with lye soap. When you have done that, treat your scalp with kerosene. What for, missus? To get rid of the goodies, you see. Burris, the other children might catch them, and you don't want that, would you? The boy stood up. He was the filthiest human I have ever seen. His neck was dark grey, the backs of his hands were rusty, and his fingernails were black, deep into the quick. He peered at Miss Caroline from her fist-sized clean face on his face. No noticed him, probably because Miss Caroline and I had entertained the class most of the morning. And Paris, said Miss Caroline, please bathe yourself before you come back tomorrow. The boy laughed rudely. You ain't sending me home, missus. I was on the verge of leaving. I'd done my time for this year. Miss Caroline looked puzzled. What do you mean by that? The boy did not answer. He gave a short, contemptuous snort. One of the elderly members of the class answered her. He's one of the evils, ma'am, and I wondered if this explanation would be as unsuccessful as my attempt. But Miss Caroline seemed willing to listen. Whole schools full of them. They come first day every year and then leave. The truant lady gets them here because she threatened them with the sheriff, but she's given up trying to hold them. She reckons she's carried out the law just getting their names on the roll and running them here the first day. You are supposed to mark him absent the rest of the year. But what about their parents? Said Miss Caroline in genuine concern. Ain't got no mother, was the answer, and their paws are right contentious. Percival was flattered by the recital. Been coming to the first year of the first grade for 3 years now, he said expansively. Reckon if I am smart this year, they'll promote me to the second. Miss Caroline said, sit back down, please, Paris. And the moment she said, I knew she had made a serious mistake. The boy's condensation flashed to anger. You try and make me, missus. Little Chuckle got to his feet. Let him go, ma'am. He said, he's a mean one, hard down, mean one. He's liable to start something, and there's some little fox here. He was among the first diminutive of men, but when Percival turned toward him, little Chuck's right hand went to his pocket. Watch your step, Paris, he said. I won't soon skilly as look at you. Now go home. Paris seemed to be afraid of a child half his height, and Miss Caroline took advantage of this indecision. Paris, go home. If you don't, I'll call the principal, he said. I'll have to report this anyway. The boy snorted and slouched leisurely to the door. Safely out of the range, he turned and shouted, report, and he damned to ye. He knows not no slut of a school teacher ever born. Can and make me do nothing. You ain't making me go nowhere, missus. You just remember that. You ain't making me go nowhere. He waited until he was sure he was crying. Then he shuffled out of the building. Soon we were clustered around her desk, trying in our various ways to comfort her. He was a real mean one. Below the belt, you ain't called on to teach fools like that. They mean to make 'em's ways. Miss Caroline, not really. No, don't you fret, ma'am. Miss Caroline, why don't you read us a story? That cat thing was real fine this morning. Miss Caroline smiled, blew her nose, said, thank you, darlings. Dispersed us, opened the book, and demystified the first grade with a long narrative about a toad frog that lived in a hall. When I passed the Radley place for the fourth time that day, twice at a full gallop, my gloom had deepened to match the house. If the remainder of the school year were as fraught with drama as the first day, perhaps it would be mildly entertaining. But the prospect of spending 9 months refraining from reading and writing made me think of running away. By late afternoon, most of the troubling plans were complete when Jim and I raced each other up the sidewalk to meet Atticus coming home from work. I didn't give him much of a race. It was our habit to run meet Atticus the moment we saw him around the post office corner in the distance. Atticus seemed to have forgotten my noontime fall from grace. He was full of questions about school. My replies were monosyllabic, and he did not press me. Perhaps Calpurnia sensed that my day had been a grim one. She let me watch her fix supper. Shut your eyes and open your mouth, and I'll give you a surprise, she She made crackling bread. She said she never had time, but with both of us at school today, had been an easy one for her. She knew I loved crackling bread. I missed you today, she said. The house got so lonesome. Long about 2 o'clock, I had to turn on the radio. Why? Jim and me ain't ever in the house unless it's raining. I know, she said, but one of you's always in calling distance. I wonder how much of the day I spend just calling after you. Well, she said, getting up from the kitchen chair, it's enough time to make a pan of crackling bread, I reckon. You run along now and let me get supper on the table. Calpurnia bent down and kissed me. I ran along, wondering what had come over her. She had wanted to make up with me. That was it. She had always been too hard on me. She had at least seen the error of her fractious ways. She was sorry and too stubborn to say so. I was weary from the day's crimes. After supper, Attica sat down with the paper and called Scout, ready to read. The Lord sent me more than I could bear, and I went to the front porch. Atticus followed me. Something wrong, Scout. I told Atticus I didn't feel very well and didn't think I would go to school anymore if it was all right with him. Atticus sat down in the swing and crossed his legs. His fingers wandered to his watch pocket. He said that was the only way he could think. You were in amiable silence, and I sought to reinforce my position. You never went to school, and you do all right. So I'll just stay home too. You can teach me like Granddaddy taught you and Uncle Jack. No, I can't, said Atticus. I have to make a living. Besides, they would put me in jail if I kept you at home. Dose of magnesia for you tonight and school tomorrow. I'm feeling alright, really. Thought so. Now what's the matter? Bit by bit, I told him the day's misfortunes, and she said you taught me all wrong, so you can't ever read anymore ever. Please don't send me back, please, sir. Atticus stood up and walked to the end of the porch. When he completed his examination of the wisteria fine, he strolled back to me. First of all, he said, if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. Sir, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Attica said I had learned many things today, and Miss Caroline had learned several things herself. She had learned not to hand something to a Cunningham for one thing, but if Walter and I had put ourselves in her shoes, she would have seen it was an honest mistake on her part. We could not expect her to learn all Maycomb's ways in one day, and we could not hold her responsible when she knew no better. I'll be dogged, I said. I didn't know no better than to not to read to her, and she held me responsible. Listen, Atticus, I don't have to go to school. I was bursting with a sudden thought. Burris will remember. He just goes to school the first day. The truant lady reckons she's get out of the law when she gets his name in the roll. You can't do that, Scout, Atticus said. Sometimes it's better to bend the law a little in special cases. In your case, the law remains rigid. So to school you must go. I don't see why I have to when he doesn't. Then listen. Atticus said the evils had been the disgrace of Maycomb for 3 generations. None of them had done an honest day's work in his recollection. He said that some Christmas, when he was getting rid of the tree, he would take me with him and show me where and how they lived. They were people, but they live like animals. They can go to school anytime they want to. When they show the faintest symptom of wanting an education, said Atticus, they are school tomorrow, you would force me to. Let us leave at this, said Atticus dryly. You, Mascot Finch, are out of the common folk. You must obey the law. You said the evils were members of an exclusive society made of evils. In certain circumstances, the common folk judiciously allowed them certain privileges by the simple method of becoming blind to some of the evil's activities. They didn't have to go to school for one thing. Another thing, Mr. Bob Evil, Burris's father, was permitted to hunt and trap out of season. Atticus, that's bad, I said. In Macomb County, hunting out of season was a misdemeanor at law, a capital felony in the eyes of the populace. It's against the law, all right, said my father, and it's certainly bad. But when a man spends his relief checks on the green whiskey, his children have a way of crying from hunger pains. I don't know of any landowner around here who begrudges those children any game their father can hit. Mr. Evil shouldn't do that. Of course he shouldn't, but he'll never change his ways. Are you going to take out your disapproval on his children? No, sir. I murmured and made a final stand. But if I keep on going to school, we can't ever read anymore. That's really bothering you, isn't it? Yes, sir. When Atticus looked down at me, I saw the expression on his face that always made me expect something. Do you know what a compromise is? He asked. Bending the law? No, an agreement reached by mutual concessions. It works this way, he said. If you'll concede the necessity of going to school, we'll go on reading every night, but as we always have, is it a bargain? Yes, sir, we'll consider it sealed without the usual formality, Atticus said when he saw me preparing to spit. As I opened the front screen door, Atticus said, by the way, Scout, you had better not say anything at school about our agreement. Why not? I'm afraid activities would be received with considerable disapprobation by the more learned authorities. Jim and I were accustomed to our father's last will and testament diction, and we were at all times free to interrupt Atticus for a translation when it was beyond our understanding. Ah, sir, I never went to school, he said, but I have a feeling that if you tell Miss Caroline we read every night, she'll get after me, and I wouldn't want her after me. Atticus kept us in fits that evening, gravely reading columns of print about a man who sat on a flagpole for no discernible reason, which was a reason enough for Jim to spend the following Sunday aloft in the tree house. Jim sat from after breakfast until sunset and would have remained overnight had not Atticus severed his supply lines. I had spent most of the day climbing up and down, running errands for him, providing him with literature, nourishment and water, and was carrying him blankets for the night when Atticus said if I paid no attention to him, Jim would come down. Atticus was right. Thank you for listening. That is it for today. Please watch my next video for the rest of the story.